Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Your Practice podcast, the podcast where I get to simplify the marketing and the mindset so you, the chiropractor, can increase your income, your impact, and your enjoyment in practice too. Hey, before we dive into today's episode, I want to start with some questions for you. I want you to take a moment right now and think about an area in your practice that you've been struggling with recently. Now, it could be something like, why aren't you as busy as you'd like to be in your practice? Why are you perhaps not earning the income that you'd like to earn? Or why is it difficult, maybe for you at the moment, to get patients to stay under care or start care? Why is it difficult to find new patients? Or is it that you're having frustration working the number of hours? You feel like you're working too much, you're not getting a break, you're not getting the holidays that you want. I want you to think about an area where things aren't turning out the way that you want them to. Now, once you've thought about this, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself this question. I want you to imagine that you're perhaps in a court of law and you're needing to convince the jury, or at very least explain to them, why are things this way? Why is it that, for instance, that you're working way too many hours? Why is it that you're not as busy in your practice as you'd like to be? Why is it that you're not earning the income that you'd like to earn? Why is it difficult for you to find new patients? So how would you explain to them? What reasons would you give to them? What stories would you share? What facts would you share with them about this? Now, maybe your answers could be things like, there's too many chiropractors in my area. I moved in and then over the last, 2-3 years, a bunch of chiropractors come in. They're offering a lot of discounts and it's just saturated. Perhaps for many of you at the moment, the facts that you would share is that the economy is really tough. Interest rates are going up, the disposable income that people have is less, and so therefore chiropractic is sitting down lower on their values. Maybe it might be that you're just thinking that nowadays people don't seem to value chiropractic care. Is it that just because there's so much choice nowadays, chiropractors and osteopaths and physiotherapists, that new patients just don't value chiropractic anymore? Is it that the reason that you would share with them is that most people just don't want to put in the time and effort and they're mostly after a quick fix? Or is it that you practice the story or the fact that you would tell them is, listen, if my practice isn't open all these times, then I'm going to miss people. And every time I go on a holiday and I come back, my practice crashes. And so what are the reasons that you would share with the jury if you had to just simply explain to them, why are things the way that they are? Now, once you've identified that and pleaded your case all inside of your mind as you're listening to this episode, I want to ask a favor. For the rest of this episode, and only for the rest of this episode, I want you to consider the possibility that all of these facts and reasons that you just shared might not be facts at all, but they might be stories, okay? And in fact, what many of them are not just any kind of story, they're disempowering stories. Now, I only want you to do this for the rest of this episode. At the end of this episode, you can go back to holding on to them and you can reinstall all of these facts and belief systems and stories if you want. But I want you to be open to the idea that maybe the reason that you're not achieving what you're wanting to, more holidays, more income, more patients, greater ease, impact, maybe that there is a disempowering story. And for the rest of this episode, what I want to do is together, let's explore how these stories might be impacting your practice. We're going to spend some time defining disempowering stories, and I'll give you some more examples. We'll discuss how these stories form and why they persist, why it's so hard for us to actually see them. I'll help you discover some of your disempowering stories. This can be one of the challenges there too. I'm going to share some techniques with you where we can transform those disempowering stories and create stories that are likely to serve us much better. And then we're going to finish up with tips for maintaining your new empowering stories. So let's start with this. What are disempowering stories? Disempowering stories are self-limiting beliefs or narratives that we tell ourselves about our abilities, our potential, or our self-worth. Now, these stories very often stem from past experience, from societal norms, or the expectations of others. We'll dive into these in a little bit in a moment there too. And they can prevent us from achieving our goals, what we want to happen in our practice, pursuing our dreams, and living a very fulfilling life. Now, I mentioned a bunch before, but some other common examples of disempowering stories could be things like, I'm just not good enough to attract high-paying clients. I'll never be successful as other chiropractors because I don't have the same resources. Now, those resources might be time, they might be money, they might be experience. One of the disempowering stories that I hear from chiropractors all the time is that people will think I'm a fraud if I'm seen promoting my services too much. Other disempowering stories I hear all the time is some form of, I don't deserve success because I haven't been in the industry long enough. I'm a new grad, okay? And again, this can be flipped on the other side of things that says, listen, I've been a chiropractor for 30 years. I'm out of the game now, okay? That can be another disempowering story. One of the stories I hear, particularly when it comes to managing a team of whether it be chiropractors or staff, is that I'm not a natural born leader, so I can't effectively manage a team. These are all examples of disempowering stories. So how is it that these disempowering stories form, and why is it that they persist? Okay, so there's many different reasons why they form. Negative experiences in the past failures, disappointments, rejections. These are all things that create for us the evidence in the past that we bring into the future now that literally fertilize the disempowering stories, okay? They create a narrative that we're unworthy and that we can't get what we want to. Social conditioning is a big one. Societal norms or stereotypes. These sort of expectations can absolutely influence our self-perceptions and create different forms of self-imposed limitations. So there are many societal norms in around wealth, in around marketing, in around, we tend to root for the underdog very often. And particularly here in Australia, we have this idea of what's referred to as the tall poppy syndrome, that whenever an individual or a business gets too big for its boots, we like to cut it down. And so there's a societal conditioning there that in many cases wants to stop us from growing, because what's underneath this is if we see somebody achieving in their life, it very often makes us feel bad. So rather than celebrating them, what we tend to do is we want to cut them down. And of course, family and cultural beliefs. We can very often internalize the beliefs and values of our family and our culture, even if they're not conducive to our own personal growth. So, there is a saying that give me a child until the age of 7 and I will show you what the man will be, is in those first years of our life, we're very much influenced by the beliefs and the stories of our family, particularly with regards to money, self-love, and worthiness, okay? So when we talk about finding these a little bit later on, perhaps this is something for you. And then, of course, there's comparison to others. Recent episodes, we've spent some time talking about imposter syndrome, and to some extent, that's exactly what that is, comparison to others. When we're comparing ourselves to others, particularly, notice that when we compare ourselves to others, most often what we do is that we compare ourselves with others who are doing better. And so therefore we use that as evidence for why we can't succeed. Very rarely do we compare ourselves to others who are doing worse than us as an example, okay? But when we're comparing ourselves to others in a way that makes us feel inadequate, okay, this very often leads to those types of disempowering stories. Now, why is it that these stories persist, okay? These stories persist because they often operate at a subconscious level. We are experts at seeing the stories of others. My gorgeous wife, Lauren, who I'm feeling very in love with at the moment, not that I love her all the time, but I'm sure if you're in a relationship, there are stages that you feel more in love with your partner than the others. At the moment, I'm feeling very much in love with her. So we often chuckle to ourselves when we're talking about our dearest friends, is that it's very easy for us to see the stories that are holding them back in their work, in their family life, in all areas of their life. We're experts at it. And we often sit back and chuckle and go, I wonder what they see about us. Okay, so we have a difficult time identifying our own stories. It's a bit like a fish in water. We're not sure of it, okay? So they operate at a subconscious level, makes them difficult to recognize and therefore to challenge them. Additionally, what our stories do is they become a self-fulfilling prophecies. When we believe something negative about ourselves, our thoughts and behaviors unconsciously reinforce that belief and they create a vicious cycle. So if we don't think that we're a good adjuster, then the next time we go to adjust a person, we have a lack of confidence. So therefore that comes through in the delivery of our adjustment. The results from our adjustments won't be as good. And so therefore that reinforces the idea that I'm not a great adjuster. If we think that patients won't stay for long-term care, then that comes through in the body language and in the communication styles that we have in our initial consultation, our report of findings. And very often what happens in these scenarios, having coached a lot of particularly younger chiropractors, is that we end up showing up as incredibly needy, okay? There's nothing more repulsive than showing up as needy. And then when our patients see us as needy, they're very unlikely to want to follow through with their care, and therefore that reinforces our belief. And so many of our disempowering stories create this self-fulfilling prophecy. So therefore we have a lot of evidence for it. We'll talk about evidence a little bit later on, okay? Now the impact, let's talk about the impact of these stories on our business and our personal life can be dramatic and huge, and sometimes it's subtle, but most times it has an enormous impact, okay? So it will absolutely hinder your growth and success. By believing that you're not good enough or that you lack resources, then you're going to be less likely to take any of the necessary risks or make any of the bold decisions that would be required to grow your practice. Procrastination and sabotage. So our disempowering stories often lead to procrastination and sabotage. So again, when we talk a little bit in a moment in terms of how do we find these stories, if we're finding ourselves often procrastinating or we see that we're self-sabotaging, then chances are there's a disempowering story there for you. So disempowering stories lead to self-doubt and fear, and they cause you to put off the essential things that you should be doing. And this subconsciously will undermine your own efforts. Disempowering stories lower your self-esteem and your confidence. Constantly telling yourself that you're not good enough, comparing yourself to others will erode your self-worth. And it's going to make it really difficult, if this is the case, for you to promote your services. And it's very hard to grow a business if you're not promoting your services, at least internally, let alone what we're doing externally as well. Disempowering stories very, very often lead to burnout and stress. So if you believe that you don't deserve success, if that's one of your disempowering stories, you're going to likely overwork yourself in an attempt to earn it. I've got to prove that I'm good enough. And this very often can lead to burnout and will absolutely negatively impact not only your practice, but your personal life as well. And of course, our disempowering stories also lead to limited personal growth, okay? So we get stuck in a cycle of negative self-talk, and this prevents us from growing and evolving personally and professionally too. All right, let's move now to identifying some of the disempowering stories. So as I mentioned before, many of these tend to really hide, and it's hard for us to see them. But one of the ways we can find these is through reflection and self-awareness as well. So we can start by cultivating self-awareness through reflection. Now you can do this by setting aside some time to explore your thoughts, your emotions, and your beliefs in around yourself, your capabilities, and in around your practice. Now, some questions that might be nice for you to consider during this process might be, what fears or doubts do I have about my abilities as a chiropractor? What might they be? A second question to ask yourself could be, when do I tend to feel inadequate or undeserving of success? Third, are there any reoccurring thoughts or phrases that play in my mind when I face challenges in my practice? Do you have those thoughts that go in your mind? Are there something that I'm not good enough? This won't work out. Nobody will like this. Nobody's going to watch this video. No one will come along to this workshop. Are there any reoccurring thoughts that you have? And the fourth one here is, can I identify any patterns in my past experiences or upbringing that may have contributed to these disempowering stories? So the idea of just being open to, to begin with, reflection and self-awareness, be open to the idea that maybe these are stories and begin to look for them. These questions here, in fact, just asking yourself, what do I believe is true that might not be? And then just listen to what comes up as well. Journaling can be a way that can be very helpful, and it could be just journaling responses to those questions I just asked beforehand as well. Or you could write about a recent situation where you felt hesitant or afraid to take action in your practice. What thoughts or beliefs were holding you back? You could list the top 5 things you believe are limiting your success as a chiropractor. For each of these 5 things, you could explore, go into them a little bit deeper. What are your beliefs in around these things? You could reflect on goals that you've been reluctant to pursue or have abandoned in the past. There's what many of us have. There's 2 sets of goals. There's the goals that we would like to have, and then there's another goal that's bigger than, it's deep inside of us, that bigger than what most of us are comfortable to share. Maybe you could spend some time writing on that. Why you've been reluctant to share that? What is it that's holding you back? And maybe you could create what's often referred to as a thought inventory. And that is where you just jot down all the thoughts that come to mind when you think about growing your practice. It could be just as simple as that. When I think about growing my practice, what thoughts come to my mind? Spending as little as 5 to 10 minutes every day can be profound at uncovering many of the disempowering stories that we have. Another way to find them is just by seeking external feedback from peers, mentors, or coaches. I mentioned beforehand that Lauren and I are fascinated by how easy it is for us to see the stories and the challenges that are holding many of our closest friends back. In fact, it's one of the things that I do as a coach is it's very often easy for somebody external to see the challenges that you're having that we don't see ourselves. And so this could be quite simply just through peer discussions, connect with other chiropractors or even business owners, doesn't have to be other chiropractors, and engage in kind of open, honest conversations about your challenges and beliefs. Be vulnerable. Let them know what, these are the reasons I think I can't grow my practice. These are the challenges there as well. Now, they may be able to offer different perspectives. They may be able to identify your disempowering stories, ones that you haven't recognized yourself. Then having a mentor, reach out to other chiropractors or somebody that you admire in the industry for guidance. Again, a coach, investing in a coach, a professional coach, somebody who specializes in mindset and business development, okay? Feedback sessions, okay? So request constructive feedback from your team, your colleagues, those people in around you. These are all ways that can be really helpful in helping you to identify your negative or disempowering stories, okay? So once we've identified them, how do we go about changing them? Okay, that's the big one. It's one thing to know these are the stories. So one of the ways we can do this is what's often referred to by psychologists as reframing your narrative. Okay, in essence, this is telling a different story. So this involves you changing your perspective on a situation to create a more empowering story or more empowering narrative. Same thing here as well. To reframe your disempowering stories, consider the following examples. Okay, so here's some examples. Maybe you're saying, I'm not good enough to attract high-paying patients. Okay, I'm not good enough to attract patients that want to pay for long-term care. Maybe your reframed narrative could be, as I continue to improve my skills and provide excellent care, I'll attract clients who value my services. That's a story that's going to be much more productive and much more empowering for you. Another disempowering story could be, I'll never be successful as other chiropractors because I don't have the same resources. Now, those resources might be time, experience, money as well. The reframed narrative in this situation could be, look, I can find creative ways to leverage my unique strengths and experiences, setting myself apart from the competition, okay? So in essence, what we're doing here is that we're creating a new story. Now, a similar bend to that, again, another topic or technique that's often used by psychologists is this idea of cognitive restructuring, okay? Now, this involves identifying and challenging any irrational or negative thought patterns and replacing them with more rational, balanced thoughts, because many of our disempowered thoughts or stories are incredibly irrational. They're illogical. And once we're able to bring them up to the surface, we can realize that. And this form of cognitive restructuring can be helpful for that too. Let's give you a couple of examples. One of the disempowering stories might be leadership is let me go back into here. One of the disempowering thoughts could be, I can't handle a growing practice because I'm not a natural born leader. So again, we could restructure that to leadership as a skill that can be developed, and I can learn to manage my growing practice by investing in my personal growth and seeking guidance from mentors. Much more empowering story. Another disempowering example here is people will think I'm a fraud if I'm promoting my services too much. That restructured thought, an example could be promoting my services is essential for building my practice, and as long as I deliver quality care, my reputation will speak for itself. Now, many of you will be aware of the power of affirmations, okay? So we can change our old stories, our disempowering stories, by creating powerful or more empowering affirmations. This could be something like, I'm a skilled and dedicated chiropractor, capable of providing excellent care to my clients. Every day I grow stronger and more confident in my abilities to grow and manage my practice. My success is a result of my hard work, determination, and commitment to helping others. These are all examples of affirmations. If we repeat them enough, if we believe them, and if we do this along with some of the other examples I talked about beforehand, that's cognitive restructuring, reframing your narrative, then this empowering stories has to start to take a different set of actions. These new actions give us a different result, and then we start to have evidence for us to create these and to build upon and support these new stories. There's a lot of research for the benefits of visualization and mental rehearsal. Now, they're two different things. Let me explain how they are. Okay, visualization involves imagining yourself achieving your goals. So what is the outcome? Sitting back and thinking and seeing the practice really busy, looking at your bank account, seeing all those zeros inside of there as well. Mental rehearsal involves practicing the steps that would allow you to achieve that outcome. What are the steps that would allow you to grow your practice? Delivering a great report of findings, being able to connect with somebody in initial consultation, imagining your patients hopping up from the table telling you that their life has never been better. This is the idea or examples of mental rehearsal as well. So visualize the outcome and mentally rehearse the steps that will help you get along there. Another thing that will help you going forwards is focusing on progress rather than perfection, okay? Perfection is one of those things that doesn't really exist, and so therefore it holds us back. So recognizing that growth and success is a journey, okay? And it's essential that we focus on the progress of the journey instead of striving for perfection. You do this by setting realistic and small incremental goals, okay, that you can attract the progress. And what this is doing is each time you're taking a step forwards, it's more evidence that supports the new story. Embrace the idea of failing forward. That is, failure will absolutely happen. And each time there is a failure, we're going to learn from it and we're going to move forwards. And on top of this, I talk about this a lot throughout many of these episodes, is make sure that you're practicing self-compassion. Recognizing that everyone encounters challenges and that it's okay to be a work in progress. We're all learning, okay? None of us have this stuff mastered, although it looks like it from the outside. We're all absolutely doing our best. So we've gone through so far, we've talked about that in many cases, it's a story that's holding us back. It becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. The story creates a set of actions. These actions give us a result, and this result therefore reflects the story that we have too. We talked about ways of us finding our disempowering stories. I suggested some questions we can ask, reflection, journaling, those type of things there too. We then went through how do we go about creating these new stories, and finally, how do we go about kind of maintaining it? Okay, like anything in life, there will be a tendency for these new stories to want to dissipate and therefore end back with our old stinking thinking as well. So you keep a hold of this new mindset, mind frame, these new beautiful stories by regularly reviewing and updating your stories. Understand, one of the things that creates the negative stories in the first place is just societal norms. There's so much in society that is driving us towards mediocrity. There's a lot in society that doesn't want us to grow and expand, because as we grow and expand as human beings, we leave other people behind. It makes them feel terrible, so therefore they pull us back as well. So you might want to consider scheduling regular mindset check-ins, which you just take a few moments, maybe once every couple of weeks, just to reflect on your thoughts. These mindset check-ins are part of my everyday now. In the morning, I'm checking in, how am I feeling and why am I feeling that way? And invariably, if I'm feeling lousy, then there's a story I'm telling myself. We maintain these new powerful stories by celebrating your achievements and milestones, looking for this evidence and using this evidence there to reinforce and build strength into our stories there too. And again, as you overcome obstacles and achieve new success, you're going to need to update your stories again, because as we want to continue to grow and we reach a new level, there'll be new stories. And this is an important point I want to touch on, is that my experience has been, is that for every stage of growth that I've had in my life, whether it be with a relationship, whether it be in a business, I adopt a new mindset, it gets me to there, but then as I want to grow again, I need to change it again. So it's continual growth, and there'll be continued disempowering stories at every level that you move forwards. Make sure that you're surrounding yourself with positive influences. Creating an environment that supports the empowering mindset is absolutely crucial as well. Cultivate relationships with like-minded chiropractors or business owners, professionals who share similar goals and beliefs. Participate in fun events, conferences, online communities as well. And of course, consume content. You're listening to this podcast, that's a help, but there's books and articles. There's many different things that can help to support you as you're moving forwards. And again, another reminder here is to practice self-compassion and self-care. Allow yourself time to rest and recharge. When our body isn't feeling good, when our body is overwhelmed, it's very hard to have really powerful stories that go along with it. So what many people need to do is just really good self-care. Eat some good food, rest, relax, get back into some exercise. So develop some self-care routines as well. And again, remind yourself that when you encounter setbacks or challenges, that this is what happens, okay? Treat yourself with absolute compassion and kindness. I think it's important that we be investing in professional development. When you invest in what you pay for, you pay attention to. So it could be just buying books. It could be investing in communities, in masterminds, investing in something that matches your values and is ultimately just a few steps ahead of where you are now and can help to pull you forward. So the thesis or the summary that I want to share with you here is the stories you tell yourself is ultimately what creates your life, because the stories we tell ourselves is what leads to our actions, and our actions is what lead to our results. If you're not getting the results that you want in any area of your life, I want you to consider that maybe what it is a story that you're telling yourself as well. So in today's episode, we discuss the impact that disempowering stories have on our practice, on our personal and our professional lives. And we covered loads of different techniques to help you identify and transform these limiting beliefs. We talked about enhancing self-awareness through reflection and introspection, utilizing journaling to explore some of your thoughts and beliefs. Again, seeking external feedback from peers, mentors, and coaches. We talked about the importance of reframing your narrative, creating different stories, looking for where our stories were perhaps illogical, didn't make sense, and how can we structure those in a way that makes more sense as well. So developing powerful affirmations, harnessing the power of visualization and mental rehearsal, and of course, surrounding yourself with positive influences as well, okay? As I wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with a message of encouragement. Remember that every chiropractor, literally every chiropractor, including those that you look up to who you think are bulletproof, faces their own set of disempowering stories and limiting beliefs. Either right now, they still have them, or they've certainly had them in the past. So you're absolutely not alone as you're struggling and challenging with this as well. So it's essential to recognize that these stories don't have to define you. They are just that, they're stories. And the one thing I want to remind you of is that these stories, you are the author of them. We get to rewrite our stories. So your ability to transform these disempowering stories into empowering stories will play a significant role in the growth of your practice and of you personally as well. So embrace the journey, continually invest in yourself, and learn to lean on the support of others. Don't be an island with regards to this, okay? Again, you're not the only one that's suffering from this. Opening up to those around you can very often help you move forwards as well. Keep pushing forwards, and remember, you have absolutely the power inside you to create the business and the life that you desire. Folks, as always, thank you for all that you do. Keep saving lives, and I look forward to seeing you back here next week. See you soon. Bye. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer Program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching Program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.